All right, I'm going to make sure that I click record when we truly get started. Got to give folks time to join. And we're also able to chat on the side and do Q&A.
How do we do? Oh, I see in the panel.
All right, thank you everyone for joining. We're going to give everyone a few minutes. Maybe we'll start 3 minutes after to jump on. I think Zoom is working overtime, and so is most everyone's internet. So sometimes it takes a while for folks to really join in and participate. So hang in and hang on for a second while we wait for everyone. I'm going to maneuver over to record because I'll probably forget to do that. All right, we're getting a few folks jumping on right now. We're giving everybody 1 more minute, and then we'll go ahead and get started with our presentation and discussion. All right, so I'm showing 4:03. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for joining us. We are happy to have you here. You're probably 37th online meeting and webinar today, so we appreciate your time and just allowing us to share some information and really talk through where we are. So we've put together a panel and a conversation around how do brands thrive with 2/3 to marketing budget. Obviously, times have severely changed in several weeks. Most of you are probably here because you're in some capacity working with marketing or with your brand on how do you message during this time, and potentially are seeing loss in budget. So that's the topic. Originally, this is an in-person meetup group that we really wanted to create a community and have everybody join us in person, but obviously that's not possible right now. So our goal here is just to really be as open with you, be this a conversation, ability for you to speak up. There is a sort of the official Q&A at the bottom of Zoom that you're welcome to use. Feel free to use the chat. And you can also raise your hand. I really encourage you guys to, if you're comfortable, ask a question and at some point share your experience. Again, our goal here is to be conversational and have an ability to have a dialogue with you. So that's enough about why we're here and what we're doing and all that. Again, we value your time. So thanks for joining. I'm going to jump right in and introduce who our panelists and speakers are. So we have Zach. He's the founder and creative director of Human Factor Media, a creative digital agency. He makes short films and story-driven videos for brands eager to stand out, and then uses the gamut of new marketing tools to connect those companies' campaigns with the right customer at the right time. We also have Jay, the co-founder and head of analytics practice at Barry Analytics. He works with Fortune 500 clients as well as small and mid-sized businesses to devise predictive analytics strategies for executive decision makers. He's also a professor of analytics at NYU, and we're also joined by Ron, who's the creator of OMG It's Bomb. He's a food blogger, personality, and professional photographer covering food trends in New York City, and he does a lot of digital marketing work on behalf of the beverage and food industry, and we'll learn a little bit more about unique challenges obviously there. And in the background, we're joined by Isha, who is an NYU master's student in analytics and marketing, and she's done a ton of work and interned with us. So I wanted to give her a shout out because she's really been helpful in making all this happen. So that's, and I'm Anya, no formal introduction needed there. I want to dive in though, because I do want to, just acknowledge the weird times that we're in. And one of the favorite things I've been thinking about is, when do I get to get out? So I'm going to launch a really fun sort of icebreaker poll. It's not super fun, but it's something to think about. What are you most looking forward to when this is all over? So just to engage you guys and hear about, like, what are people thinking about? I'll tell you mine if you want to take a moment to just tell us, what are you thinking about and hoping to do when the ban on being outside is lifted? The thing I'm mostly looking forward to actually is going out to eat, because I'm tired of cooking. So I'm seeing a couple of responses. I'm seeing some traveling. Anybody looking forward to getting back to a physical office? I don't see any of those. All right, excellent. I see Roxanne has raised her hand, so I will find you, Roxanne, and we'll... All right, Roxanne, if you want to unmute yourself and want to share anything, feel free to do that. I don't know if you intended to raise your hand or just clicked on the wrong button. So if you wanted to, feel free to speak up. While you think about what you want to do when this is all over, I'm going to dive right into what we want to talk about and share with you some of the things that we've put together. Again, right now, a lot of where we are is very uncertain. We've got folks that are in panic. We've got brands that we're working with that are unsure about what to do, and others that are responding in unique ways that are different than what, everybody sort of has their own way of doing business. Some are hypersensitive, like Coca-Cola is really focused on passing that message and saying we should stay apart. There's some social responsibility, high quality content, but then there are also brands that basically stopped doing anything at all. They halted all of their spend. And we're seeing that. Some of our clients have reached out and said, hey, I'm going to stop everything. I'm freaking out. I don't know what this means to me. I'm not going to do anything at all. And that's really why we wanted to pull this together, is to make sure that the brands themselves are really within the right space. So I'm going to stop talking. I'll turn it over to Zach and Ron to tell us a bit more about their experience. They're also working with direct clients. And Ron, maybe I'll start with you. Can you tell us, so now that we're seeing brands freaking out, right? Or brands also pausing, or brands acting like it's, nothing has changed. What are you doing and how are you working with your food and beverage industry, especially in your unique situation? Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of cause-based initiatives going on, and I'm obviously participating in one of them, being No Kid Hungry, at least making sure all the kids are at least fed. Since my industry, I mean, in the restaurant world, is hardest hit, they're all in survival mode. I seem to think that most of the corporations, at least in this space, have been a little bit wiser and maybe shut it down and are on a waiting pattern, so to speak, to see, whether or not all of this normalizes, or when it does. We'll probably see more of that fairly soon. But I've encouraged a lot of the ones who've hopped on the Seamless bandwagon. Almost virtually all restaurants who've done delivery are now on that platform, amongst other ones like Caviar and whatnot. I'm trying to steer them away from that, because that's become a slippery slope when in fact Seamless decides to start charging 30% again. And of course, in the restaurant industry, every percentage counts. They're already in razor thin margins. So that 30% basically is eating from their own bucket.
Yeah, and Jay, can you talk a bit more about in terms of data ownership, right? So when the restaurants in the industry there is busy doing what they need to do in order to get the food out. But now, is there an opportunity to reevaluate what's happening in terms of analytics for those restaurants and businesses?
Yeah, there's an interesting situation, right? So the restaurants and most of the small businesses are they onboarded onto some platform, right? So whether it would be Seamless, whether it would be Caviar, any ordering platform, right? And what happened as a result of that is they don't own their customers anymore, right? The customers are mediated via Seamless. Even if you look at like 15 years ago, right? Most of the restaurants or the experiences that we had, we knew the restaurant people, we knew the founders, or we knew we were intimate with these people, right? We went to the similar places. In New York City, we have 18,000 restaurants here. We still wound up going to the same places, right? Because we like the owner, we like the chef, we like the food. We had some kind of relationship with them. And now with this intermediary platform, what happened is that relationship is moved from the restaurant owners directly to the third-party platform. So when a crisis like this hit, what happened is that the restaurant people do not own the data. They do not know who is ordering food from them. They do not know the behavior of these people. And they are completely limited in terms of data ownership, right? They don't own their customer database, and Seamless and all those folks are making it very hard to own their customers. So they can't do direct marketing. They can't, like some of the people that I know very personally, they can't even call me directly and say, what's going on, So it's taking a big hit on relationship marketing, right? From a data standpoint, you don't know your audience. So there is going to be some of the things that, we were working closely with Ron prior to this crisis, and we're talking to restaurant managers and say, hey, how do you get to know your customer directly? Shouldn't you be building a customer database yourself, right? Should there be another channel? How do we acquire and interact with your customers directly? And outside of this, I think coming out of this, and the restaurants are completely in a bad place in the sense of not thinking about this, because these people do not come from a technology background. They're very good at direct marketing. They're very personable people. And now I think coming out of this, they really need to think about, how do I own this data? Just not serving food. If you don't own this data, you're not in a really good place.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's how I think about it, and that's the big learning. If you're whatever business you're running, you need to have that customer data with you, and you need to find a mechanism to capture that information.
Yeah, thank you. So Zach, I'll turn it over to you a little bit as well, because you're working with lots of clients, and obviously you've seen a change in behavior with your clients as well in terms of needs for videos and getting the messages out and reduced budgets and figuring out, what do I do? Do I stop? Do I keep going as if nothing's happened? Can you talk about some of the experiences that you're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that those guys hit on it pretty clearly too, and the slide does too. I think we're seeing two different reactions from clients. One is complete panic, complete entering into a new environment of uncertainty and just hitting the pause button on everything and waiting to see what's going to happen. And then on the other side, we have clients looking for the opportunities in this and looking for how to, take advantage of the fact that the CPMs on most of these digital channels are coming in, some of them at historic lows. So I think, I think like anything else, this is a matter of not panicking. I think that this is a reset. Whatever's going on right now, we don't know what's going on, and it's going to be tough to gauge, the full economic toll here and what verticals are specifically impacted by it. But it's a reset for everyone. So that's bad news, but it also means we're all on the same page. We're all playing, against the same rules. So, many industry norms, including ours, will see a lot of changes. So in that landscape, the panic instinct for everyone, especially brands, is either don't market or go with deals and discounts. And that's the first instinct. We did it too. We're like, all right, let's charge half. Let's just keep charging everybody half. We'll keep as much business. It's not creative thinking. It's desperation. And deals and discounts are not going to work because it's a race to the bottom. Everyone just competes each other further into the recession. So I think that getting creative is reframing your brand, telling your story in a new way, using all these free communications channels to continue to matter to people. And a really interesting point, which is not mine, but I heard someone say today, it's really interesting. You can use, even though the second quarter and the third quarter are not going to be we don't know, but they don't seem to be times when there'll be tremendous consumer activity. People are still listening, okay? And you can use those quarters to shore up new relationships with brands, kind of like Jay was talking about, new relationships with the people who are going to be your buyers in Q4 and beyond. So doing nothing makes no sense, basically. Doing nothing is the one thing that we know for sure is not going to help you. Putting the budget you do have under the bed and hoping that things are going to snap back to normal is not a strategy. This is a crisis with lasting consequences, so people have to figure out how to fight in that framework and not hide from it. And I would say that a tremendous case study for this is McDonald's. In the recession in the 90s, they reacted out of panic and fear, put away their budget, and their competitors came in and swooped up some of that market share. In the last one, they decided we're not going to make that mistake. They actually increased their ad spend at a time when everyone else was fearful and held back, and they grew by 16 to 20% over the course. They came out of the recession stronger than when they went into it. So there are all these opportunities out there. I can dive into some of the content opportunities because obviously I think that's where our strength is. But in general, I think the message is to resist panic.
Yeah, thank you. I think we'll move into that shortly, right? And some exact content examples and things that you can recommend in terms of brands, both from, again, your perspective, and Ron, who has a super successful following and is an influencer. So we'll talk about sort of avenues that brands can use during this time to shine, right? I think one of the things we said that you should not do is simply not do anything at all. So we want to talk about like what we should not be doing versus what we should be doing. That sounded like a double negative, but essentially we don't want you to panic. Of course, we're all panicking personally. I mean, the reality is, right, like it is confusing, right? It's confusing for us personally, for our businesses, for our workforce, and so on. But at the same time, on the flip side of that is anytime we do make very unstructured, not thought out decisions, we're usually making them just, again, based on gut versus strategy and really thinking through things. And so one of the things why we have Jay here as well is to really think about how are we going to be effective, how will we be successful in the future with less money. One thing to consider is you must use data. You have to measure what you're doing. You have to prove what you're doing. And through the further examples that we'll be talking about, we'll talk a bit about best way to do that, probably tools you already have, or things that you can start to, evolve into. So I'll pause there because I talked about what you should not be doing, which is nothing. So maybe Zach, talk a little bit about what are some ways that you're recommending. I think one of the things that you're doing today are videos, or what are some things that you're recommending brands do focus on and how they can pivot with less money?
Yeah. Well, I think that in some corners you are seeing more creativity too. And this is a weird kind of offshoot, as I know you should put it in there, the number of creative companies that were founded in the last recession, right? Airbnb and Vimeo and some, Slack. So there is this kind of creative impulse that comes out of the fear and the uncertainty. And so I think it's really important to try to tap into that. The other kind of the ways there's a lot of ways to do that. Obviously, I'm biased toward branded content, entertainment value content, and story. I think that at a time when you have to rely on organic reach more than you have to rely on boosts and ad spend, I think that you're always going to get more organic reach with entertainment value. You're always going to get more reach with figuring out how to relate to people as human beings instead of as people seeking the best deal. So I think that the markers of entertainment in an economic recession are pretty strong. And this is an important point. A lot of the country, it's a very weird situation because a lot of the country is in the same financial position they were in 6 weeks ago. A lot of us aren't, but a lot of people's financial position hasn't changed. They're just stuck. They're at home. So we don't know how that's going to play out, obviously, but doesn't really justify a totally doom and gloom perspective on that no one's buying right now. I don't think that there's any real data that shows that. I think that we're waiting to see what's going to happen, but we're not, we're not literally in the throes of, zero consumer activity. So what I mean by entertainment value in this case is, we have to understand that people are not rational spenders. Okay. There's a lot to back that up. I'm not saying to take advantage of that. I'm just saying you can pivot your messaging to make it more accommodating to people who are sitting at home. Everyone's run out of their Netflix queue. It's over. All the new shows they can watch they've seen them. They've seen them twice. People are going towards YouTube, Facebook Watch, IGTV, other downstream platforms or long tail web series. They're going to get more play than they already have. So to be able to be a producer on one of those other channels is a really great opportunity to get some organic attention. I think another temptation is going to be to go to the well of old ad creative and figure out what was our best campaign last year. Let's run that. Recycling old creative. Last year's content is also really not a strong strategic decision. Whatever performed best during one of the greatest bull markets in U.S. history probably isn't going to be very well received during.
So how do you do that, Zach? How do you do that? We can't go to the studio today, right? And record and let's say you don't know very well, where do you grab that content? Can you talk a little bit about some ways that people can get creative in that area?
You mean literally during the health crisis or during what's coming? So I break it down in two ways, right? Because right now, we're all on equal footing. We're in trouble. We have to be really creative about how we create stuff from this contained environment. But then I think there's a 6 to 12 month follow up here where that's going to be the biggest temptation for people to reach to old creative, do old things, cut back on marketing. I'm kind of talking about that period. But if you mean during this point, we can talk about that.
I think even during this, yep, go ahead, please.
And I also think that to piggyback on what Zach was saying, this is a good opportunity there is a lot of webinar overload, right? There is so many content out there, LinkedIn. I see half the people in my network are writing new articles every day. I think all of a sudden everybody is creative, right? I think that gets, I would suggest not getting caught up in it. And I was reading another article about this is a time to also deliver really good quality content, whatever business you are in, right? Also really think about what that audience would look like, right? And put really content targeted at that audience, right? And the people are going to resonate with it. And then from a data perspective, measure that, right? Are you using the right narrative arc in delivering the content? Your content in media, where what Zach is doing, video content versus your Instagram content versus your blog that you're writing. You just not panic and putting together a lot of different content with not a coherent message. Time to take a step back and look at who are my audience? If you're selling fusion Asian food, and you're not doing any real business right now in house seating, but write about that kind of content, and also measure. This is what something that we do traditionally, right? We look at the content analytics itself. We use natural language to understand what keywords are in this particular article, how are they resonating, how much of the article are people reading. In LinkedIn, right, we literally build out matrices. I mean, you could start with a simple spreadsheet. I wrote this article, this was the title, this was the key concept, 200 people watched it, right? 200 people listened to it, right? 200 people read it. You could be as basic as that, right? You don't have to be super analytics and have a big data team to do it. And Facebook ads, right? Me and Ron always talks about how many people are liking his Instagram post, right? What pictures are resonating, right? It'll be, and take a measure of that and eventually build some kind of dashboard on this content is resonating, this content is not resonating. So don't just put it out there, but also have a good measuring strategy behind it, right? So that within 2-3 weeks, you'll be surprised to see, you'll start seeing patterns. Who are the people who are coming to you, right? And use this opportunity, this downtime, to actually start growing some of those audience organically.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. That's a good point. So we do have a quick Q&A before I jump over to Ron to talk a bit about influencer. One of the question from the audience is, what is cool enough to be entertaining? Brands seem to be so serious right now. So Zach, maybe I'll turn it over to you. I mean, there's, are we okay to start doing something different? Are we really need to focus on this constantly? Can you talk to that a little bit?
It's a chance. You're taking a chance because people are serious and they're scared. But I mean, I think a lot of brands can't afford not to take that chance. And I think that the originality and novelty always thrive in environments of uncertainty. And so I think that the big creative chance you were thinking of taking, but now it seems like now's not the time. Maybe now is the time. The imperative is stronger than ever to stand out on your own terms. And everyone is, this is a really rare thing because everybody is literally at home at the same time, bored, restless, looking through their phones. They've seen everything they're going to see. And they may finally not be too busy to listen to your podcast or watch your web series or consider your story.
Yeah, I think the statistics, 80%, right, of the country is literally homebound, and it's very unusual time. So both from a digital marketing perspective and the ability to reach those people that are normally commuting or busy with work or doing all those things, this is unprecedented. And now is also that time to measure that interaction, to make sure that you're really capturing that. If you're not even using it right now, start measuring so that when things start to move forward, you have data to start to further be, you know, better prepared, I guess.
I think cool, the word cool is relative, right? It's a subjective experience, right? Something might be cool to me, might not be cool to somebody else, right? It's like David Jeff and Siat and people singing Imagine song on recommend. The whole country is going through a panic, right? So it might be relative. I think this is a time where we do this every day, right? Every day in marketing and marketing analytics, when we measure data, we do A/B testing, right? Develop a content. If you're developing a TikTok video or if you're developing a YouTube 1 minute or 2 minute quick snapshot of something funny, show it to your immediate group. Like show it to your immediate 10 people in your office or 10 people in your peer network, or maybe even 20, right? What is that peer close safe space looks like for you, right? And show it to them, get some validity. And we do that with the clients even prior to this. I mean, this is a good area, a good time where we take it a bit more seriously and look at, okay, we put out a cool video. We thought this was really funny and we showed it to 20 people, only 3% found it funny, right? Remaining 17 of them, oh, this is not funny, it's insensitive, right? Reevaluate the content. It's nothing personal. Go back, re-edit your content, minor tweaks, put it back, do some more A/B testing, and then now we're ready to push it forward, right? That's one way to measure cool. I mean, if you look at some of these videos out there, and I'm always amazed when I read the backstory, how this video came about. They went to hundreds of edits before it became to a place where that went viral, right? It's just like they accidentally, I mean, every now and then that happens, but sometimes I dig back into it and where is data coming from and read too much into it. And Zach can chime in, how he makes his videos cool. It's not accident that one day morning I had a brand new idea. It went through testing, it went through some peer review, and that's what gets you that end result.
And Jay, how much stronger would brands be in their position right now if they had been measuring for the last 3 to 5 years and had so much data backed up on, what during a time of crisis this piece of content did very well, this tone didn't, right? If they had all that information all along.
Right.
So a lot of big clients from big companies, right? The large clients like L'Oreal's of the world, they've been collecting data pretty intensely, right? And smaller clients, we see that gap when it comes to small and medium size, less than $1 billion or less than $100 million, less than 5 million, 10 million, in that range, because they outsource a lot of this to platform companies, right? They outsource a lot of their customer service to platform companies, and kind of in a disadvantage when it comes to measuring that. But I think
that's what Zach was alluding to, right? Like if they were doing that measuring as well, like they would be able to be, and looking at that, right? Ultimately, they would be in a better place because they would know who they're really delivering
Absolutely.
message too. Yeah, for sure. So let me turn it over to Ron for just a second. I mean, I talked about the fact that he has an Instagram page and works with the food and beverage industry, but I don't say that lightly. He has what, like 70,000 followers, and I know personally I take a look at his page all the time because I really miss eating out. So, so talk to us a little bit, Ron, how you're using your platform now and what you're advising your clients in the food and beverage industry, which can be translated into other areas, on what they should be looking at with less or maybe no budget at this point, right? Because they're really struggling.
Yeah, well, I've come a little bit further from 70,000. I'm something like 90,000,
I'm sorry
94.
about
But
that.
anyway, it's only a few, just a few here and there. But before I jump into that, I really wanted to hit on this campaign that I launched, and this was just before all of this happened, with Corona Hard Seltzer, right? They're a prime example of just taking advantage of the moment. They didn't plan it that way, obviously, but they had dropped, I think, at least 200 to 300 million on this campaign, not knowing that all this was going to come to play. But to play on that little theme, their branding or slogan was coming to shores soon. So I thought that pretty much hit it on the head. And when people thought that they would be hurting, they're really not. They're not hurting at all. But it goes to show, this sort of segues into my idea, and in the fact that a lot of brands now are looking to us as influencers to try to offset the production costs that they're used to spending. And so one of the ways that I've seen work, and it has been working for some time, it's really exacerbating this overall trend that we're seeing. We're sort of moving away from celebrities, right, which cost millions of dollars. Now we've got mega influencers. Those are the 100K and up type of influencers. And now we're seeing micro influencers in the last year come into play. Those are the under 100,000 followers. And now they're going even more granular, and they're focusing more on what we call nano influencers, which are the 10,000 and below. So basically, like you and me, who would not have as much following but still have pull with our friends, having us do that heavy lifting across many of us, obviously, is another option depending on what brand you're trying to sell. So we've seen that being successful. Now, given the fact that I'm locked up at home, I can still produce content really quick. I mean, granted, I have my own photo studio here. I can do whatever I need to on a whim, but we can leverage that and still be able to make a sort of marketing budget work. So we're seeing that to be really successful as far as CPM goes.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you, Ron, for sharing that. So let's maybe talk a bit more about the content approach, Zach, that you shared a little bit earlier. I mean, we talked about videos, and maybe somebody asked about the cool video. What else would you think that, or what else would you recommend brands start thinking about?
Well, they're in a position right now where everyone has to address it. I mean, you can't. I guess it depends very much on what your model is. If you have some kind of product or service that makes sense for people to be pursuing right now, but that's got to fall into 5 to 10%, right? Outside of that, I think it's during the next few weeks, everyone should be addressing it, figuring out some original way to do that, and then after that, I would just try as hard as you can to slow down, figure out what is the thing. I think that the best playbook hasn't really changed. It's just that more companies are going to be pushed to doing things the right way, given the new circumstances. So I feel that the idea of now not being the time to try something new, to play it safe, I think that's the worst approach. I think now is the time to do the thing that no one else is doing, not the thing that you see everybody else doing. So I can go over some content examples that I think are great right now. I think that people who are realizing that look for where the entertainment patterns are in economic downturns. In the Great Depression, everybody went to the circus. Nobody could afford anything else, but the circus attendance blew up. In 7 of the 8 last recessions we've had, box office receipts went through the roof. Right, everybody went to the movies as a form of escapism. Now this time we can't go to the movies anyway right now. But even if we could, I mean that's not going to be the way we deal with this. We're dealing with it through free digital content to sort of satiate that impulse for escapism. So I would think about how to have your brand have something in the place where people are going to go to escape this. So figure out where that is for your specific customer. It's different for everybody's ideal consumer, and figure out how to create around that impulse.
And something which is a bit difficult to measure as well, right? The empathy component of it, right? Right. The hard sell, I think probably the sell should be a little bit softer, in the sense of the videos that goes out, or in terms that buy button, right? Buy everything now, right? Probably might want to slow down on that a bit.
Right.
And measure everything, right? And one of the things that I want to talk about is like we always talk about the marketing cost, as well as how do you measure that, right? The cost per acquisition, the cost per lead, things of that nature. When you're doing paid digital advertising, it's a bit more easier because directly I know how much money I'm spending via Facebook, how much money I'm spending via LinkedIn, or whatever the channel that you're using, and eventually dividing by the number of leads or opportunities that you captured, right? In the organic as well, be aware of the fact that one way to think about this is how do you do cost per acquisition when you're doing organic, right? Because you don't have a real cost when you're putting together good content. And if you're a small company, it's mostly like you and a couple of others putting together. Come up with a dollar figure, right? Think of it yourself as like a little marketing agency. How much, what would you pay per hour, right? How much would you bill yourself an hour? And look at how many hours did it take to put this content together, right? That would be a true measure of, okay, how many hours is taking together to put together a blog, to put together a video, to do Instagram, or to do Facebook. That would be a total cost of marketing. And then that will also help you evaluate what content is effective in terms of objective figures, right? In terms of absolute numbers, and not going a little bit beyond the number of likes and the number of leads that come to you, right? It will help you understand what is the cost per like, or the cost per share.
I just want to jump in and say that, maybe, as a part of this reset, it's really a good time to reassess your audience and where they are. I mean, for instance, I'm, even though a big chunk of what I'm doing now is on Instagram and Facebook, I'm, like many other people on TikTok, we're leveraging yet another platform that seems to be gaining traction. Maybe it's really time to experiment, and see where those you can uncover where the dollars go.
Right. This is a great opportunity. I think, Ron, that you touched on this again. You have less budget, but you now have an audience in front of you. So measure, which is what Jay is saying. But get creative and try things that you may not have had time or the energy to do before. Now you have to get creative with that budget. Try different avenues that you haven't. As Zach was saying, try different, take chances and opportunities, obviously within reason, right? We're still in the situation that we are, this isn't perhaps the time completely to make jokes around coronavirus, and there's a lot that's happening, but take measured chances within your brand. Get feedback first from your team, folks that are trusted, and put stuff out there and see what's resonating with people. I think this is, the future is going to be slower versus faster in terms of spend, right? The reality is that most likely brands will need to spend less because everyone will spend less from their own pockets, right? And cost will be a thing to consider. So I think the time to get creative and use this new way of approaching is right now. But again, as we put together and as Isha found really interesting facts, that lots of new innovation is happening during these times that people just have to get creative. So maybe let's talk about what when Jay mentioned don't buy, right? Maybe you don't want to push someone like buy at 50% off, just get offload. What are some calls to action that we can talk about our brands that we're working with are doing? Or maybe Zach, if you could maybe touch on what are some things that brands are considering to be in the presence and in the mind of buyers or in the mind of people who are open to getting that message, but not be so outright like buy now because it won't be around tomorrow.
Yeah, well, I agree with everything that Ron and Jay said, because I think it's a speaking of, you know, data points and the idea of really assessing who your audience is. Maybe you think you know who your audience is, but this is an opportunity to figure out if that's true. And suppose you tested you know, your new kind of KPI for your campaigns was not the percentage of people who decided that they had immediate interest in your product. Maybe the new KPI is engagement. Maybe it's how many people engage with the entirety of your content, how many people complete, you know, actually finish reading a paper you put out or a blog you put out, or actually watch the, you know, the full 3 minutes of a video. Maybe that's a performance indicator that we can use to gauge how much people are connecting with your brand. You know, I think that's as important as anything. If you look at what a lot of really smart brands are doing, and they haven't changed their behavior just because of you know, some hiccups in the economy, they're creating ecosystems around their pages. They're treating their social media pages like stages. Like, they understand these are platforms. And so the goal is not just to use them as a formality to get people to click like on a post, be retargeted, go to a landing page, buy the product. I mean, that's a tried and true funnel. Everyone understands that you're going to get some percentage of conversion with that, and then reinvest those profits and continue the cycle of outbound spending. But look at the way that Yeti or Dove uses their content, which is they really don't, they're not using it to send you to a landing page or Accenture, right? They're what they're trying to do is, and Wells Fargo is also great at this, they're trying to get you to remember, wow, I watched something that they put out. It was different than other things I saw that day. And next time I see something else from their brand page, I'm going to click on it. That's the entirety of their goal. And a huge macro example of that is Amazon. Amazon creates Amazon Prime. You get all this free content, but they know that Prime users, people who have Prime memberships, end up buying 3 times as much as non-Prime members. So that's why Jeff Bezos famously said, Golden Globes help us sell socks, because they know that, you know, they're creating an ecosystem. And once you're part of their ecosystem, sooner or later, you're going to become a customer.
I think that's a great point. You're building a brand. You have more time to be much more measured at this time, right? And much more focused, not just from a buy perspective, but really what do you do? Who are you? How do you engage your customers in this time? How do you tell a story? Not just about buying, but about the human experience. And I think that's the other sort of pivot I wanted to make here. Did you want to say something, Zach?
Yeah, I was about to add one more thing here. Amazon has been always in the forefront, right? Everybody else paid a price for how much data they collected, right? So the first 20 years, I think they first made money in 2011. That is literally 15 years after the company was founded, right? They turned the profit in 2011, I think 2011 or 2012, if I remember it correctly. All of that time, they were collecting data, just betting that they will eventually succeed, which they eventually did, right? They know everybody's buying patterns and behavior, right? Another thing is that when you sell in Amazon Marketplace as a third-party seller, right? Amazon has very strict restrictions on how you're going to use your buyer data. They do not share your buyer data when you buy from Amazon. marketplace, right? Which is, again, they're collecting ancillary data from your customers. So if you're selling this third-party platforms, like some of our customers are selling via Shopify, which I would recommend always over selling over Amazon Marketplace, or any marketplace that you are selling your product outside of your direct e-commerce where you know what your customers are, you got to have some kind of data capture mechanism. You need to have some kind of 5% initiative where you click here, fill up this form, we'll give you 5% discount code on your next order if you buy directly from us. You need to have some kind of catch. The big lesson from this crisis is that if you do not own your data, if you do not own that customer, if you do not have these hooks, whether you're a brick and mortar place like a restaurant, which Ron is dealing with, or an e-commerce shop where you're selling via Amazon Marketplace or your Shopify, you got to have some way to have that capture, right? I'll give you some discount if you use my service or come to me directly. You need to have that catch.
Yeah, I think that's a good point for brands to start to consider more of a way to really own all their information and how they communicate with their buyers, be it B2C or B2B as well, right? Both ways, both important. I want to make sure I open it up. I know we had a Q&A, but again, it's hard to do this, right? Because we're all in our homes and we're all, I don't know, kids running around or dogs barking. It's usually the case in my house. But if you feel comfortable and you're a participant and want to either share your experience, either on, you don't have to say who you are or don't have to share who you work for, but share what you are doing around marketing and what your organization, how they're reacting. Again, our goal as part of doing this webinar is really to build a community and at some point move into a physical space where we can grow together, learn from each other, have some great folks that are doing very unique, wonderful things, share their knowledge. So we wanted to, obviously we have no choice, start it online, but want to move it into a physical space. So if anyone that's a participant either wants to chime in through chat, Q&A, or wants to raise their hand and really speak up about their personal experience, we'd be happy to do that. So I'm seeing someone, I don't know, it says meeting host. I don't know what that means, but I just unmuted the person who raised their hand. If you want to speak up, we'd love that.
Yeah, hi, my name is Dan Odeskalki. I'm with a company called SAIPR. I just wanted to share, we recently helped a restaurant that was doing really horribly up on the Upper West Side. And we just did this Rock the Quarantine campaign, blitzkrieging digitally a half mile around his restaurant. And, in 2 days later, he came back to us and said he's never had deliveries like this. So, I mean, it is possible, going back to, I think Zach or whoever said it, people that are aggressive and take advantage of the opportunity, they can succeed. And we just started this Rock the Quarantine campaign for this restaurant, and it really was successful.
That's amazing.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's really cool. I'll tell you, a local restaurant by my house, I thought this was hilarious, that with every takeout you get a roll of toilet paper. I thought that was funny. It's, when do you ever see toilet paper as part of advertising, unless it's toilet paper? But that's creative. I don't know if that's cool, but it was cool to me. I thought it was just different, right? Taking those risks and being able to see that is really cool. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, I just want to jump on that. I've recommended some people do something like that, if only not just to stay relevant, but I think we're seeing also the drive to of these niches that are just coming up, like health and wellness is a good one. So I've recommended some just throw in a, I don't know, energy booster like a ginger lemon tea or something, just to keep that in mind. So the tweaking of the messaging is also key.
Yeah, thank you. It's relevant. It responds to the times, right? It's not just business as usual. And we're seeing brands do that. We're seeing brands refocus and say, you're going through this, we understand, here's what we can do to help. I mean, I'll share one personal one. I got a message from Verizon that says, here's some free content that you'll be able to watch. I don't actually have cable, but I do use Verizon for my, for my internet. But I thought that was an interesting way to just sort of, they're not selling anything. In fact, they're providing a service. And I know that not all brands can afford to do that. This is a really large brand, but it's a unique proposition during the actual times that we're facing right now. And I appreciated that. And just thought that was an interesting fact. So thank you for that share and just that conversation. Isha, I wanted to, I don't know if you're still somewhere in the background there. I think one of the examples that you had around nano influencers was how maybe some brands are reaching out. Can you share that example with us as well? Since we think that might be the way to go for a while, people sitting at home doing stuff.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, I study with NYU and I've been seeing many people who have good followers on Instagram with maybe 1,000, 2,000 followers. And suddenly all of them have become brand endorsers. They are talking about cosmetics, they're talking about the beauty products they are using. So I reached out to a friend to ask her why is she doing this. And she said that a brand reached out to her and they are sending her those free samples and that she's doing it just because she's getting those samples.
Thank you. So that's a great, unique way that perhaps was unattainable, or just brands didn't either do that. They were going for somebody really, really big, but that sort of organic way, right? That student is doing that. Maybe another way to explore that's cheaper, right? At some point, brands were also maybe not reaching out to Ron, who has 94,000 followers, because they were maybe concerned more about the cost versus a student who has 1,000 or 2,000 who is paid by lipstick, or whatever it is that they're selling. But it is an opportunity to do it at a smaller budget. So again, just talking about ways that companies can get creative and use less. And then there's obviously a way to track that as well. Are there ways, how many followers, are they growing? Are they watching that content versus other content? So there are ways that those brands can see value. There's not a lot of spend, right, on that, but then seeing whether that may be the new trend of having folks share that information on a more micro level.
Something like having a unique code for herself. Like I know on her name is Sabina, so it had Sabina123 or something like that, just for the brands to then track how many people actually used it through her.
Exactly. Yep. So that's a way to see whether this experiment that they're trying is working, right? And they can have some actual numbers and data to back that up. Anybody else that is on our panel, or rather on our participants, that thought might be an interesting way? Or again, you don't have to share who you work for. If you just want to share, you're really here representing yourself. I want to be clear on that, right? You're here because you're interested in the space, not necessarily just for the work that you do and the brand that you're working for. We want to grow this as a way to improve everyone's situation. So fine if you're not super comfortable, or you can chat whether you know how things are happening, but we also want to stay within the hour. I think there is a lot of online overload, including happy hours and I don't know, networking events. So we do appreciate you being here and spending this time with us. And I think for the foreseeable couple more months, we'll meet online and have more speakers and different speakers about different topics. But I sincerely hope that in the next couple of months, at some point, we'll move into a physical space where we can see each other and be in one room. Any parting thoughts from Ron, Zach, or Jay that we want to share here? But let's start with Ron. I'm just going down my camera list here. Anything that you want to share with the audience in terms of looking ahead?
I was just thinking back on chefs who've just recently been laid off. They're trying to find something to do in the meantime. And of course, chefs, their whole life is around cooking. So just like celebrities themselves, they've gone online and turned to home cooking, and then before you know it, they have an audience, and they could turn that into yet another revenue stream or a career. I've seen that happen. One of my friends just overnight became a personal trainer for a virtual fitness class just because they're now out of a job. So, you know, carving yet more opportunities out of this madness.
Yeah, thank you, Ron. That's great. Jay, how about you? Any parting thoughts about you know, how to make this work in the next few months or a year, or however long?
Yeah, measure everything, measure whatever you do, right, man? Don't have to be complex, don't have to be AI and all the buzzwords. Simple spreadsheet would do. If you're a small business, get a spreadsheet going, measure your LinkedIn post, measure your Instagram, Facebook, measure what content people are looking at, and it will take you only an hour to do. And within 1 to 2 weeks, you'll be surprised how much data you collected, and that will give you a real insight into what kind of content to deliver, what kind of marketing to provide. Earlier, the gentleman was talking about delivery. Is the delivery working? Is the right strategy? Is this cool enough? Or is this message resonating? Or is it going above? Is this offer working? Right? With very soon, because everybody's digital, you can collect a lot of data. You don't have to really count the number of people even coming to the store, and take it from there.
Thank you. Thanks. And Zach, how about you? Any parting thoughts for the
I
group?
I echo Ron's optimism about even the people who seem to be getting hit the worst. I think it's really interesting. In the last recession, Shopify blew up. Shopify was this sort of, it was around, people could go on there, and but the reason that it really blew up is because a lot of people who were getting laid off decided to build their kind of dream business, and all these new users flocked to it, and a lot of people ended up exploring their passions and making profitable businesses doing it. So I think that there are silver linings. And just to kind of, the theme of 2/3 your budget, how to thrive. I don't know if, I mean, I think we've all talked about it in different ways, but just as a very concrete, practical kind of strategy, it's, you can take your existing budget, you can peel off half of it to do the most conservative, dry thing that you can do, so that you can say, look, at least we're doing the safest possible thing here, and we're satisfying all the people in the office who are advising us to do this. And then you can take the other half, or even 2/3 conservative, and then take that remaining third and do something you would never previously have taken a chance on, and make a documentary series about your company. Do something totally original in your vertical. And I think that impulse toward taking chances will be the thing that gets you through it, more so than doing what everyone else is.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Feel free to reach out to us. I'll share actually the document with all of our contact info. Feel free to join. We actually, again, do have a meetup group, and we hope to communicate more events. We'll share the information on how you can be in touch with us and how you yourself can participate and share your insights with the group. So please don't be a stranger. Let us know if you have questions and whether you're interested in helping out and being part of the panel in the future. Thank you, everybody, very much for joining. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.